Family mode.
Hello friends and colleagues, thank you very much for joining us today and tuning in to today's webinar as we're going to be discussing total costs of fleet risk. Now today's webinar is based around a new tool which is just being launched, and this is part of its launch, which is sitting on the National Road Safety Partnership Program, and the aim of it will really be to help your organisations to calculate your total fleet costs. But I shall leave that to our presenter to delve into more when we introduce him. But first, my name is Jerome Karslake. I'll be moderating today's session. I manage the National Road Safety Partnership Program, which is a collaborative, industry-led initiative which aims to assist businesses and organisations to improve their road safety of their employees and to help reduce the nation's road trauma. But to put it simply, road safety, it's simply good for business. So, in terms of housekeeping, we're recording today's session, and a copy of the recording will be available along with a presentation material afterwards. So all of our wonderful listeners, once it's concluded, you can access it all, and we hope others will draw on it in the future. So keep an eye out on your emails, and you'll see that next. So one of the main things we really want to see in today's webinar is we want to be nice and interactive. So please don't be shy, get involved. Any comments, thoughts, questions you have, enter them into the question box at any stage of the presentation. We have several opportunities throughout the webinar. We'll be drawing on the questions and we'll fire them away to our presenter. And talking of him, he is the man of the hour. I'd like to introduce Mervyn Ray. He's part of Zurich Financial, and he also sits on our NRSVP steering committee. Mervyn has 29 years experience in the insurance and risk engineering industry, all with Zurich. He's worked in the UK until 2003 when he transferred to Australia. He has experience in a broad range of industries, ranging from general manufacturing, strategic infrastructure, through to mining. Mervyn is now responsible for customer management within Australia and the wider APAC region. He has provided and coordinated insurance and risk management solutions across the transport sector for the past 10 years in Australia, including specialised road transport, freight rail and marine. So we have a great expert today who'll be drawing on and feeding into the total cost calculator. So with no further ado, please let me introduce Mervyn. All yours, Mervyn, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Jerome. Hope everybody can hear me okay. And as Jerome said, my name is Mervyn Ray from Zurich Insurance. To set the scene, I thought I would just start off with a couple of bullet points. The estimated cost of road trauma in Australia is a staggering $70 million per day. That's the costs to the Australian taxpayer, everything from our health services and emergency services, our road network and so on after the crash has occurred and the repairs and so on. It's not just the insurance costs. Interestingly, defending Australia, the Australian Defence Force budget is exactly the same. It's $70 million a day. So we spend $70 million a day defending Australia, which is good and proper, but we're losing $70 million a day as a result of needless road trauma. So how's Australia faring? When we compare our national road trauma fatality rates against our Asian neighbours, we have a favourable statistic. However, Japan does have a better safety record, and our peers in Europe have a much better fatality rate. Considering our roads are similar in design and our cultures are similar, our legislation resembles that of European democracies, we do seem to be lagging behind. Now, I should say that the data that you see in this presentation is slightly out of date. There are more up-to-date figures, but comparatively, countries have reduced their fatality rates in line with most other countries, and so the comparisons are quite similar. Australia does stand out as being slightly ahead of our European neighbours. Road safety has a massive impact on society, and hence the reason why I shared the $70 million per day statistic. For this reason, we can play a major role in improving or damaging an organisation's corporate social responsibility. In reality, at present, there is still only limited data on the true extent of the work-driver effect on road safety, because few jurisdictions around the world maintain any purpose of journey information in relation to road crashes. The best data currently available is for Queensland in Australia, where at least 16% of hospitalisation crashes and 24% of fatal crashes involve someone driving for work. In Australia, the annual cost of road trauma is 30 billion, or 2% of GDP. In comparison, that is more than the annual cost of defence in Australia, although it has come down slightly. More people have died on Australia's roads than have died in all major conflicts that we have been engaged in as a nation. From a more general operational or business perspective, and when managed in a proactive way, there is a clear link between safety, quality, customer service, efficiency, and the environment through getting things right first time. Better fuel efficiency, less downtime, and reduced asset wear and tear. Work-related road safety is a core activity which cannot be isolated from business overall, and offers many marketing, business development, corporate social responsibility, staff well-being, and brand enhancement or protection opportunities by ensuring employees continue to drive safely. At the most simple level, it is much better for an organisation to be promoting a good news safety story, such as winning a safety award, than it is to have to react to and suppress the outcomes of a major incident. Legally, many jurisdictions around the world, including Australia, have tightened up their occupational health and safety and other regulations to include work-related driving, an example of this being fatigue management, chain of responsibility, and so on. The financial implications of work-related road safety can be massive, with significant increases in insurance costs, ambulance chasing, legal fees, personal injury costs in recent years. Industry research shows that typically workplace injury costs are met 40% by the employee, 30% by the employer, and 30% by the community as a whole. Insurance provides certainty and removes or transfers some of these financial exposures. Without it, and depending upon how risk-averse you were, businesses would self-insure by setting aside large amounts of readily available cash in the event of a road traffic incident. It also transfers day-to-day expertise and knowledge when having to deal with the reporting, investigating, handling and settling of incidents, particularly when a third party is involved. So insurance is important, but there are limitations. The best way to illustrate this is to consider the iceberg, and we all know what it did to the Titanic. The known and often risk-transferred or insurable costs are often only the tip of that iceberg, and underneath there is a greater unquantifiable cost that is hidden, unseen, uninsurable. Several studies have been conducted that try to indicate what multiplication factor or ratio is represented by these hidden costs. The International Loss Control Institute, in their research, reckoned that for every dollar of an insurance claim, there was between $8 and $53 of non-insurable, unknown and hidden costs, the range being vast due to the various severity types of crashes. From a more conservative point of view, we typically use a ratio of 1 to 3, but even that may be too low. So what are some of these hidden and uninsured costs? The true or total cost of risk is often lost within an organization. Other cost centers are affected. It is very rare for the additional cost to be factored in or calculated. In most cases, these additional costs are not covered by insurance. Therefore, each crash that you experience often costs your hospital more money than is actually paid out by the insurance company. When we stop to think about it just for a minute or two, we can quickly come up with some known, indirect and uninsured costs, such as absenteeism from work, loss of a unit or trailer, hiring in additional equipment, and so on. If we dig a bit deeper, the effect on morale, productivity and so on can be considered, perhaps difficult though to quantify. Then when we start to think about the time involved in filling in forms, making phone calls, adjustments to schedules, conducting investigations, dealing with insurance, then the costs just start to mount up and up. That vast range of $8 to $53 in the International Loss Control Institute study isn't very helpful, I admit, although it does illustrate the issues around additional hidden and uninsured costs. A similar study by the UK's Health and Safety Executive produced a very similar result. Here in Australia, the Davy and Banks study, although not exactly the same, does provide a clearer analysis and guide to the magnitude of additional costs associated with a road crash over and above the normal damage repair bill. When we start to add up the various direct and indirect costs associated with a crash and then apply this to the profit margin of a company, we start to understand what turnover is required to just cover these additional avoidable expenses. One fleet, for example, was able to accurately work out that it had to drum up a further $10,000 of turnover just to pay for a damaged wing mirror. Nestle completed similar research into this about 10 years ago, and they calculated that they would need to sell 235 million Kit Kats just to cover their uninsured hidden costs across their European fleet each year. British Telecom also calculated that they needed to sell 600,000 broadband packages each year just to offset their hidden costs. This was before they embarked upon a comprehensive risk management strategy across their fleet, and within a few years they needed to sell just 300,000 broadband packages to defray their uninsured fleet crash costs, and it does continue to reduce. How many deliveries would you need to do? How many products would you have to manufacture or sell? How many contracts do you need to win to recover your uninsured costs? Or to put it another way, how many new vehicles could you purchase if you could reduce your total cost of risk? Are there any questions so far? Jerome, can you just monitor to see if there are any questions? Although there will be time for questions at the end.
So let's just put this in plain terms for a second, if we can move. So you're saying that when Nestle did the calculation, they had to sell 235 million Kit Kats, and then after that they could begin making a profit.
That's correct. Although what they did was they were using this purely as an example of how much productivity they'd be losing as a result of uninsured costs. So it was purely an anecdotal message, but it certainly helps raise awareness within their organization at both management level right down to the employees that road trauma, road crashes are costing their organization a lot of money, and that insurance is not just the an iconic product that they make, and they just were trying to illustrate that if they were relying purely on the Kit Kat alone as their only method of income, they'd have to make 235 million first before they started making a profit, just because of their road trauma costs that they bore themselves. Okay, we shall move on. Just a very quick example. I'll quickly walk you through it. This is a relatively simple example that helps illustrate the true cost of an incident. And in this case, the incident is a fairly large one, and the insurance claim is $100,000. The main question for you here is this: does your business consider, calculate, and articulate your total costs of road incidents in this way? Do you think that if you shared this with your employees at your workplace, they may have a better understanding on the true impact to the profitability of their employer, their job security, remuneration, bonuses, and so on? Perhaps illustrating this to your drivers would help educate them and make them more accountable for their driving behavior and improve overall road risk culture. So in this example, the direct cost, the insurance cost, is $100,000. That's the claim. Using that simple conservative multiplication factor of times 3, the real cost is round about $300,000 to the business. Assuming that the net profit is 5%, what that means is that the direct cost of $100,000 means that a turnover of $2 million is required to meet that $100,000. But in reality, it's a $6 million turnover needed to cover the uninsured costs. And obviously, if we reduce the costs associated with road trauma, in this case 25%, it means that the necessary turnover required also reduces significantly. But this is certainly an example of where you could perhaps simply articulate the impact to the wider organization and how the employees themselves can help participate in the profitability of the business simply by driving more safely. Now, Jerome mentioned that we've been developing Zurich and the NRSPP and ARRB have been putting together a calculator to help everybody out there to calculate their total cost of risk. We're going to do a quick demo. Bear with us. We need to change screens, and we'll run through a live example. Jerome being the customer, and I'll ask him a series of questions. I'll fill in the data he gives me, and then it will hopefully produce the right results. This went live as late as 10 o'clock last night or even this morning, so if it spits out gobbledygook, don't worry, we'll get it fixed. It is live, and so after this webinar you're able to use this link that you see in front of you now, and you can have a play around with it, and as we niggle out any of the problem areas, it will work, I'm sure. So we'll just go into the calculator. So when you use that link, you'll be taken through to the screen. You'll have need to logged in if you're already a participant of the partnership program. And down here on the right hand side below the iceberg, you click to launch the calculator. Eventually we do plan to release this calculator to the other countries outside of Australia. It'll default to selecting Australia, and then you select your typical service, whether you're manufacturing or a government entity.
I'll be manufacturing today, thanks Merv.
No problem. Jerome, can you tell me which sector you actually work in?
Well, I've always wanted to work in the food and beverage sector. I thought, let's give that a go somewhere different to my background.
Well, we know how much you love your food, so that's, we'll do that. Can you give me an example of just one product in your business that would be a main revenue earner?
How about tins of pop?
Okay. Let me just enter that in. Tins of pop. Okay. And what is your annual unit sales of this revenue earner?
Well, my business is doing pretty well these days, so I have a lot of diet products out there, so we're selling about 10 million cans of pop.
10 million it is. Excellent. So we hit next. Tell me, Jerome, in your business, what's the cost of incidents? What does your insurance company pay out each year for insurance claims?
Sadly, it's costing me a little bit. How about we throw out 250,000?
Excellent. And how many incidents or claims are you making per year?
Nice round number, 100.
Excellent. A little bit more now about your fleet. How many vehicles do you have in your fleet?
Well, I think I need a decent amount of people to get out and about to promote my pop, so 400.
Okay, and that could be sales, deliveries, and whatever. Good. What is your annual total distance travelled by your fleet in kilometres?
4 million kilometres, so we're a big country.
Okay. And how much do you pay each year for your motor fleet insurance?
Well, I'm getting slugged a bit harder these days, so we're sitting around 290,000.
I wouldn't say that's slugging, based on the amount that you're costing us in 250,000. We're probably making less profit than you are from your tins of pop. Excellent. What's your excess on your insurance?
$500.
Okay. You'll see there on the screen, folks, that it automatically just does a very simple bit of arithmetic and comes up with a premium per vehicle. That's important because you can then monitor each year because your fleet will grow or diminish. And so just monitoring what your insurance cost per vehicle is each year is a good benchmark. So tell me, Jerome, a little bit more about the product. What's your return or percentage, or what's your profit margin from your tins of pop?
I'm relying on economies of scale, so we're looking at just a small margin, about 5%.
Okay. What is your gross annual turnover?
Let me see, 400 million.
Okay, so you're turning over 400 million. and it's 5% return. I can see already there's a slight correction needed there because it's assuming 50%, not 5%. No, that's correct. Sorry, it is 20 million. Sorry, my mistake. Excellent. So, what's the average unit cost of tins of pop?
Well, they're made here locally in Australia, so we're looking at $2 at the moment.
Okay, so $2 to make the tin of pop. And I'm assuming for the purposes of this that you don't have any grey fleet exposure?
No, I've avoided that.
Good man. Just for everybody else's definition, the grey fleet is basically drivers who would be driving their own car for work purposes. We've added this in so that if you do have that exposure, you can also factor in additional data regarding your grey fleet exposure. Excellent. So that's all it took to add in the details we need. We hit the results button. I have my fingers crossed, Jerome. Have you got your fingers crossed too?
2 fingers and legs.
And hopefully, there we go. And this hopefully means something. So the pardon me, the overall claim rate per 100,000 kilometers. So that's 2.5. So you're having 2.5 crashes for every 100,000 kilometers that your fleet tick over. The kilometers traveled per claim means that it's 40,000, so every time you travel 40,000 kilometers cumulatively across your fleet, you have a crash. And the overall claim rate per vehicle is 25%. That means you had 100 crashes, you have 400 vehicles, it's 25%, and that's an often used statistic by insurance companies to compare like for like. The revenue required to fund the claims. So your direct costs are 340,000. What that means is that your insurance premium was 290,000, your excess was $500, but you were having 100 claims a year. So 100 times 500 is an extra $50,000 that you are out of pocket in addition to your insurance premium. Adding those together gives us 340,000, and that's 0.1% of your turnover and 1.7% of your net profit. The indirect costs, that's the times 3 factor based on your insurance claims payout, which was 250,000. So we ignore the excess for this. So 250,000 times 3 is 750,000. Now there's a slight error in the calculation there, I can see already, but as a percentage of your gross annual turnover, that's 0.2%. When we add the direct and indirect costs together, then the total costs of your road trauma within your organization is estimated to be just over $1 million. And so that's 5.4% of net profit. Now, for the purpose of this exercise, we were looking at your tins of pop that you make and your profit margins and so on. So our best estimation is that you would have to actually manufacture 3.4 million tins of pop just to cover your direct costs. You'd have to make a further 7.5 million tins of pop to cover your indirect costs. So in total, you would actually have to make 10.9 million tins of pop, distribute them, sell them, just to cover your direct and indirect costs each year because of your fleet alone. That's a staggering amount of tins of pop, Jerome, isn't it?
Damn. So that would come straight from my operating margins to try and just meet that cost.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're making about 10 cents profit from each tin of pop that you sell. And so that 10 cents isn't a lot of money, but obviously you're selling a high number of tins of pop each year. That's how you make your profit. But sadly, with making 10 cents only per tin, you need to sell an awful lot of them to recoup that $1 million of your road trauma.
So I'm going to have a good chat with my CFO about this and see what I can do to try and reduce for a good incentive now.
You certainly have. So we'll just pop back into the presentation. Hopefully, folks, that very quick example is a great way just to help illustrate just how much productivity is lost just to cover your own road trauma costs. It means you're paying wages, you're paying your electricity bill, leasing costs or whatever it might be to manufacture an awful lot of tins of pop. Okay.
Just before we move on, Merv, I've just got a question that's come through, and I thought whilst we're still talking about the calculator, one of the questions is really asking about Is the data from the program stored or used in any way by a third party?
No, you are the custodian of the data. What we would like to do eventually is store, or for you guys to store, these the industry sector that they're in, and what their claim rate is per 100,000 kilometers and what their claim rate per 100 vehicles is, so that we can build up a fairly anonymous database for different industry sectors, and then in the future people can actually benchmark themselves against their industry sector just across those two metrics.
So to answer the question, as I said, it's not stored, it won't be used by third parties, and there'll be no way we'll be able to identify who enters what in there. So please feel free to use it, and use it as a tool to sort of guide yourselves and make the business case like I've just done to my CFO to try and make some change.
Most important thing, of course, is we never at any stage asked for your name, your company name, or anything at all about you. So it always remains anonymous. It's just the industry sector that would be of use. So in the future we can maybe publish some fairly accurate data to show the average crash rates for different industry sectors, and then people can avail themselves of that. They'll know their own data, and then they can compare favourably or unfavourably against that data. Okay. Next slide. So motor fleet risk management is not a depreciating asset. Expenses relating to risk management are an investment, not a cost. Research indicates that returns on investment into safety and well-being could be as high as 600%, or a 25% reduction in total costs. And there are some studies out there that can easily demonstrate that. And another example of this involves a 3-year study involving a company called Snyder. They focused on improving fatigue risk, just one aspect of their risk profile. Following improvements to fatigue exposure for 225 drivers, they experienced a 73% reduction in preventable crashes. This triggered a 230% higher driver retention rate than the global average, as well as reducing insurance, personnel and legal costs. It reduced sick leave and operational disruptions. They also identified significant increases in productivity and driver well-being. There are many case studies available, and if you want to know these, you can certainly contact me. McCall's Transport is a great example where investment and divestment has brought about financial reward. It's improved safety, it's increased productivity, and also increased their staff morale and performance. And if we use our conservative insured versus uninsured cost ratio of 1 to 3, it means that for every dollar invested in safety, it could be 3 times more effective for you than it would be for the insurance company. This slide gives just a number of examples where by investing in superior performance-based safety systems, there are many rewards that can be reaped. Just another example that I think this came out of, it's Telecovert, and it's one of the Scandinavian telecommunication companies. They were embarking upon a risk management journey. They used the group discussion method, so they basically engaged with staff, mid-management, senior management, right up to the board and executives, and came up with a number of strategies to introduce. Their investment, and I won't use the Scandinavian currency, but the investment worked out at 112 Australian dollars for every 10,000 kilometres they travelled. The direct savings from reducing their incidents brought a return in the first year of $16 per 10,000 kilometres, and by the second year they also enjoyed a further $96 per 10,000 kilometres. So their direct costs of investment were recovered in just 2 years. Using the multiplier benefit, the ×3 factor, this means that up to $224 for each 10,000 kilometres travelled was enjoyed by this organisation. So that's simply calculated by multiplying the $112 saved ×3, and then reduce it by the investment, the initial investment of 112, and that's how I arrive at the $224. So basically what was happening was the vehicles were actually not exactly turning into a profit center, but they were contributing more positively to the profit of the organization because they weren't draining as much resource and costs through road trauma and crashes. Just to leave you with just a quote from Patrick Leperc, who's the Corporate Vice President, Public Affairs for Michelin. Expenditure on road safety is an investment, not a cost. And for each US dollar invested in road safety within their organization, it returns $15 on average. That's a 1,500% rate of return. That's it, folks. It didn't take me as long to go through that. My contact details are on the screen there. You can drop me an email. You can contact Jerome, the NRSPP, if you want anything further. Copies of the presentation and a recording will be made available. I'll open the floor now to all of you listeners, and if you've got any questions, Jerome mentioned at the start how you can flag these. So fire away with your questions, please.
And just so everyone also know, we mentioned, or Merv mentioned earlier on in the presentation, referred to the Kit Kat story in Nestle. Later on in November, you'll actually be able to hear about the person who led it over from Geneva at Nestle, and he'll actually expand on the journey they took after they actually did the test, and how Nestle sort of turned themselves around and focused on reducing the number of Kit Kats that they were having to spend, that they were losing, I would say. So, from your point of view, Merv, when an organisation begins looking at reducing and going on that sort of journey, what's the sort of the impact on the sort of insurance premiums as well? Is there much of a correlation at all?
Absolutely. It's not rocket science how we calculate an insurance premium. We take a long, hard look at the history of claims, and so there's a direct correlation, and we've got examples of that, and we're just about to release a media release, if not today, tomorrow, of a case study we've done here in Melbourne with an organisation, and as they embarked with our help on introducing much better risk management, we have seen a quick reduction in their costs to us as their insurance company, and obviously a similar reduction in their uninsured costs. And over the same period, as we've assessed their motor fleet risk using our grading system, we've also seen it improve immensely as well. So the risk profile of the organisation has improved, and that has, obviously delighted our underwriters. And based on the data, such as claims and so on, during the same period, we've actually seen the premium reduced by exactly the same percentage as their crashes. So they're getting cheaper insurance. But what I would stress is it's not about what you save on your insurance premium. Quite rightly, you should be seeking a lower premium if you're having less crashes. But if you embark upon the right culture within the organisation, and if you improve your driver's awareness, driver behaviour, the savings that you're likely to achieve through less wear and tear, lower maintenance costs, less fuel usage, because a safer driver is usually a greener driver. You get on average 10% savings on your maintenance bills and 10% savings on your fuel bills. So I know which one I would rather have. I'd rather have a 10% saving on my fuel bill than on my annual insurance costs, because I know I put a lot more money, invest a lot more money in the fuel tank than I do on my insurance contract.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Merv. So I guess that's about it for today. So thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to today's webinar. As Merv and I mentioned at the very beginning, it will be available online. The tool is available online, and please, we welcome feedback, input as to how we might be able to improve it, or if there's any glitches.
One final thing I just wanted to say, Jerome. I mean, the purpose of this is really just to illustrate and articulate that road trauma and the cost of road crashes within an organisation can obviously be articulated in a different way, that undoubtedly there are many, many uninsured costs, very difficult to grasp any knowledge of those, and very difficult to track them. If you just simply use a very conservative ×3 factor, you won't be far wrong. You're probably underestimating it, but it certainly illustrates that there are many, many uninsured costs. And if you can then sort of return that back into your profit and loss accounts and illustrate just how much product or service you have to provide, then it makes the CFO and other key decision makers sit up and take notice. And so if you're a risk manager, a fleet manager or whatever, and you're looking to embark upon an improved road safety culture, which undoubtedly requires investment, the sort of information that I've provided, the calculator and so on, will help you articulate that to the CFO, and slowly the penny will drop, excuse the pun, and he'll see that actually an investment in safety will increase productivity and, more importantly, profit. That's it from me. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So let's hope this tool can be used and help everyone to sort of basically put it towards starting the journey and helping make road safety, because it's simply good for business. So thank you all very much for your attendance, and please be part of the upcoming NERSP webinars over the next few months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.